the interesting thing, I think, about this taking part in the gathering thing is like, part of one of the things I like about it is it's not aspirational as a sutra. Like it's a statement on reality. Like we're taking part in the gathering. You don't join it, it's already happening. And in the same way, mostly what we have to contend with then is all of the ways of that we do this. And even when we're doing that, you know, as there's a woman in our community who's an artist, and she was saying her art is about invisibility because she feels so invisible all the time. And it's like, in a way, by entering that, she gives that a voice. That's what becomes taking part in the gathering, the experience of what it's like to be invisible. And even if you're feeling terror or sad or left out or overwhelmed, it's like, well, then that's that part of the gathering. You're holding that part for us. That's generous of you. So we can experience it together. And I think at some level, like you can feel it just sitting here together this morning, there's such a relief in that. That we're actually in a circle, we get to be part of one. I still can't get over that sometimes. And the birds are part of it, and the chainsaws are part of it, and Sister Margaret is part of it, and everything, we and the things we perceive are interwoven and not interwoven. This interweaving carries on and on while each thing stands in its own place. And I think the part that gets that kind of bracing is so much about what we want people to see or don't see. And the paradoxical part of that is usually they can see it anyway. Mm-hmm. It's just available. But that trying so hard to control it cuts us off from things and cuts us off from, they say, another thing you hear a lot in Chan is learning to trust your own moves, which is really learning to trust your way of being part of things. But my way might be, noticing things that other people don't notice, or my way might be noticing who gets left out or not, or if the candles are lit, or how to play music, or it's like that's that interweaving and not interweaving while things stand in their own place. We each somehow have a place. So often what happens is you think, oh no, I'm not good enough for that place, or I'm going to do it wrong, or I should have a different one, or someone else could do it better, or that gets quite painful. Because in a way it pits us against reality. Like reality is sort of constantly making these invitations to us. We kind of go, oh no. Not me. You don't want me. There's something quite nourishing and almost healing about seeing things as they are. Starting to let our filters drop away and see the vast strangeness of the birds, or the intricacies of a leaf, or the vividness of blue. And so I was saying with people in particular, it almost sometimes feels like staring at a person is like a cloud. They're always changing. And you can't quite grab hold of them. You can't quite grab hold of yourself. So it's this little, this little cloud of unknowing when you enter into being with another being. And, try it for a minute. Look at someone, anyone. Make them in relative close proximity. Just see how long you can bear it. And see just see how long you can bear it, and see, like, hold it for a second. And notice what comes up inside of you. What is it? Anybody just say, what do you notice about what comes up inside of you?
Sadness.
Sadness.
Love.
Tenderness.
This one. Reflective.
Intimate. Interest, curiosity.
Anybody notice any trepidation?
Terror.
Thank you. I think it's all true, but the part I'm really interested in is that, like, what is it that we can look at a bird or a leaf or a stone and just fall open? And as soon as another person is involved, it's like, whoa, whoa. Oh, this, we're so self-conscious. We're so self-conscious. And, I mean, imagine me. I'm sitting here with like 40 of you. I'm like, what is that? Like, look at someone again and imagine that you're like the sky, or you're a stone, or you're a bird, or you're a cat. Just try looking again. You're the night sky shining down on someone looking up into you. You're a dog looking up into the face of your owner. You're a child at the playground. What do you notice? Already you can do it for longer. It's interesting. Oh, yes. What else?
Vast and wide.
So much of Chan, if you boil it down, is basically what's possible if I'm not making a me. Which is kind of fun to think about, actually. It doesn't have to be all frightening. And things like koans, like what you notice in the koan curriculum, is it sort of like ferrets out all your strategies for making a me. I'm gonna get mad, I'm gonna explain, I'm gonna be shy, I'm gonna fall apart, I'm gonna, it like ferrets them all out, and eventually you just realize, like, they're just strategies, it's fine. You don't even have to feel bad about them, they're just moving through you. That same instinct when I say look at someone and you kind of go, that's so much what happens when we're entering a koan, especially in front of a teacher. Like, what if I get it wrong? What if I don't really get it? What if I won't get it? What if I look stupid? What if I've been kidding myself? What if I thought I got it? Like, it just goes on and on. And it's almost like, John talked about this a little bit last night, what we reach for when we feel that level of vulnerability and intimacy. And there are strange, quirky things. There's like things the mind does, which is, maybe ask a question or look away or, start telling you a story about nothing or, there's all sorts of useful strategies, but there's also like, I have one. I notice this when I go out to dinner with people I don't know very well, my friend. When I get nervous, I'll take a glass. And it's a way of just breaking the exposure. And sometimes it becomes repetitive and I just think, stop it. Like, what's going on? Like, what are you feeling? What's going on? That you feel the need to keep breaking the intensity. Can you just bear it a little bit? I think that's so much what Sesshin is. Can we bear it? I can't bear one more meditation period. Okay, maybe I can. If all these other people can do it, maybe I can. I think that's one of the gifts, in a way, of this practice and doing it together. And actually creating containers like this and tolerating going to see a teacher. is that someone can sometimes, the grass can hold things, and carpet can hold things, as John said the other night, and taking turns speaking and even looking at each other, it's like that's the taking part in the gathering. Somehow I don't have to be trapped in here where it gets overwhelming. I get to be all these other places that are beautiful or soft or strange or ancient or alive, or that my attention just moves around and I can find places to rest. And I think koans themselves, you hear so much the one side of Zen is focus on your koan, penetrate reality, hold it. There's all help. It does help to learn how to focus, especially when everything's going a little haywire. But there's also, you can think of it as, your koan's just a place for your attention to rest. When you don't know where else to put it, when you don't know where else to go. It's like a friend just says, here, it can hold your attention for you so that something new might become possible. Well, that's kind of a nice thing we have them. And if we can bear sometimes that self-consciousness of being in whatever we are, really different things can happen. It's almost like we just have to cross outside of that little, booth. I had a dream a little while ago that I had to give a talk at Sesshin that I wasn't going to have any time to prepare. I was just going to have to, And not only that, I hadn't taken a shower yet, and the shower was right in the middle of the hall. And I thought, no, come on. But there was a moment in the dream where I just had to okay, then I guess I'll shower in the middle of the hall, And when I got into the shower, somehow fully clothed, but we won't have to worry about that. This family of bobcats entered the shower, and they just started looking at me. And, I completely forgot my self-consciousness. I completely even forgot what I was doing. I just was with these creatures. And it didn't seem to matter anymore. And it's like when we give things just a little space, you never know what might appear and come to your aid. Yesterday, we had the music, which some of us liked, and for others of us it got a little overwhelming, and Michelle had left, and Todd and I both kind of thought, something should be done about this. What's going on here? And so I walked out and walked around and walked up and thought, this isn't coming from our property at all. It's not even coming from close to our property. And so I walked down the road, and up the road in a house was a guy standing in his garage, about my size, maybe smaller. And he was standing, he had his garage open, and he had this giant muscle car engine exposed. And he's leaning up against the side of his garage, drinking something. Kind of just looking at me like, yeah, I'm playing my music loud. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, we're having a meditation retreat down there, and I wonder if you would consider turning the music down. And I'm not going to tell you exactly what he said because it involved a lot of 4-letter words and threats. But he wasn't interested in turning down his music, put it that way. And I looked into his eyes because it's so interesting, especially having been in Sesshin, but just people, when you haven't encountered someone before and you don't know, I wasn't sure what I was going to find when I walked up there, if it was going to be kids, if it was going to be, I had no idea. And I looked in his eyes and I just saw, I saw that. And his pupils were tiny, which tells me he's probably on something. And he just stared at me like, I dare you to try to do something. And I tried a few different things, and it was sort of like that image John gave us the first night of the mosquito and the iron ox, it was like, and in a way, the more that I was hoping or trying to get him to do it, the more he felt like, I gotcha, I can do this, and you can't stop me. And so I finally said, thank you very much, have a nice day. And he said, hope you all find some inner peace. Thank you very much. And I thought, that's what it feels to be a self against the world, right? Like there was not an inch of room to connect to, like he was hell-bent on, like. And I was walking down and I thought, me trying to not have him doing that is the same like I'm trying to get my reality how I want it too. So fine, fair enough, we'll have music for the afternoon. And Mark said, digging the music this morning, I thought, demons have their place in the gathering too, Like, we were once at Land of Medicine Buddha, which is another retreat center we go to. The second morning, it was probably around now in Sesshin, and people were really starting to, shit was coming up. And all of a sudden this smell comes into the temple. What the hell is that, And it turns out they need to mess with the septic, and the septic happens to be right outside the zendo, and they're poking around in there and doing all this. And there was nothing we could do, so it was like, I guess we'll have this. I guess this is the texture of our retreat this morning. And the interesting thing is, you could tell yesterday it actually was fine. Like, we all kind of settled in. I was kind of grateful for the chainsaw. It just evened it out a little bit, Thanks, chainsaw. Like, thanks, you've got our back. And Sister Margaret went up there and didn't make it onto his property, and he yelled at her too. And I think that's part of taking part in the gathering. It's not like pruning the gathering, It's really welcoming what's here. And the more we're cut off from things, the more terrifying that gets, I think. Tonight, a lot of people in our community are doing kind of a mini session. They're like tagging along with us in the side chapel. And I've been emailing with them every day about what they're doing and how's it going. And they've been having music from Michael Wilding and poems and sitting. And they're just like thrilled to be along the ride with us. And this morning, so they've been kind of receiving what's going on from them. And this morning, Judy Swan posted a poem that I thought, I think this belongs with us. I said this weaving and interweaving goes on and on and on while each thing stands in its own place. This is a Tony Hoagland poem. It's called The Question. It starts with a quote by the poet Fernando Pessoa. It says, "We are what is missing from the world. Some questions have no answer. Raised, they hang there in the mind like open mouths full of something missing. The great Portuguese poet Pessoa said that the idea of happiness is what makes men permanently sad. The body, imagining the soul, looks ugly to itself. A man hears a word, and the world becomes a place that he misunderstands. So he climbs high into his life, ashamed of all he doesn't know, and refuses to come down. If you could coax him out again, you could tell him, say that anything can be explained. The shape of apples, for example, by their love of travel. Or that the sky is blue because it's an easy color on the eyes. Even the dog chasing its tail has temporarily a center. Even the bird disappearing into his hole knows that the world goes on without it. And Pessoa, that eminently healthy man, that artist who wore a blue wool hat, even on the hottest summer days, simply to toss it at strangers in the street. He liked to see them catch it and grow immediately less strange. You know, John was mentioning Yun Men last night and the moving stones in his garden. These rocks kind of come to our aid a lot. I'm a big fan myself. And there's a kind of funny koan from Yun Men that he stumbles upon a student and he says, "What are you doing?" And the student says, "Oh, I was talking to a rock." And Yun Men says, "Well, did the rock answer?" And the student immediately gets incredibly self-conscious and just closes up, you know. "I'm not sure if we're supposed to talk to rocks, and maybe you think I'm weird now." And Yun Men just said, "The rock was nodding before you even spoke." It's like, yeah, it's like that. It's, I was at a gathering recently, smaller than this one, and it was a bunch of new people, and everyone was sitting around in a circle, and the self-consciousness was just like, oh, and you could just feel everyone like, I don't know who I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to say about myself, and people were just grabbing for things, you know. I'm from here, and I'm from, you know, I can help you with yoga. And the woman hosting the gathering, I know a little bit, and she had just returned from Morocco to go crystal hunting, which is a whole thing. And apparently, to hunt crystals, you have to have like a good heart. This is what the old Moroccan who've been doing it for generations and generations, the crystals can tell if you're greedy or you have ulterior motives, and they won't reveal themselves to you. The rock was nodding before you even spoke, but I said to my friend, because she was saying she brought some back, and I said, "Would you bring them out for us? Like, please save us from what's going on right now." And she said, "Okay," and so she brought out this whole container, and they were all carefully wrapped, and she started opening them one by one and passing them around, and everything just went dead silent. And people are just enchanted by these. I mean, these are creatures, these are people, these are not, you know, these were beings. And the interesting thing, which I did not know about crystals, is any rock can turn into a crystal with the right conditions, which seemed promising for us in enlightenment. And she had many of them, and it was like, what was so interesting was that not only did the self-consciousness, it just evaporated, it was gone, but this incredible intimacy opened up, because everyone was so, they passed them very carefully, and they sort of were in awe together, and everyone's just, "Oh, did you see this one? And did you see this? And doesn't that make you, you know?" Suddenly everyone, shh. And I think it's kind of like that. If we're not so worried about all this, we can actually connect so much easier. And also what was interesting was that the essence of each person, that standing in your own place, naturally just came forward. People revealed who they were without having to think about it, without having to have a story about it, without anything. You could just feel them. Yun Men himself, And he had been studying for a long time with this guy named Mujo, who was kind of a cranky shoemaker, who somehow ended up taking students, but I don't think really loved having them. And Yun Men would go knock on his door at night, and finally he said, what do you want? And he said, I'm still not clear about myself. Somehow the answer is in here. And Mujo just slammed the door on him and said, utterly useless stuff. Utterly useless stuff. Not gonna figure it out in here. And somehow that way of just being with the world, whether it's rocks or anything else, kind of stayed with Yun Men. Because one of his other, famous koans is on his deathbed. Someone said, what's the entirety of the Buddha's teachings? What's the whole thing? And he just said, say something in response. It's you, it's right here, it's right now. There's nothing else.